Hola, good afternoon, everyone. I'm pretty sure it's morning time to some of you, so good morning. Hope you all had your coffee. This is Lisa Garrido, Customer Success Specialist for the Expand Add-ons team, and I'm here with Sergio Freire. Hi.
Hi, Lisa.
How you doing?
Fine.
Sounds cool. Hey, I heard you just came back from Israel from a trip, right?
Yeah, it was really good.
What were you doing there?
We went on work.
Oh.
Road trip. Yeah.
Cool. Road trip from
30 degrees in Israel. Really good.
Road trip from Lisbon to Israel, really? Yeah. I wonder how that happened. All right, guys. So thank you for joining us today for the X-Ray product walkthrough webinar. So just to give a little idea, we're just going to see how the tool in general works today. Sergio's going to walk us through how X-Ray for Jira works. So before I start, if there's any sound issues or let's say the screen is not showing, please make use of the little chat box or the question part and just pop a comment there. I'll be taking a look at that. Another thing I wanted to point out, we'll be answering, if time allows us, one or two questions at the end of the section. So if questions are coming up while we're going through this webinar, just put it in the question box. I'm going to jot all these down. We'll pick some if time allows, and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. But fear not, we will have all your questions answered, and I'll send those in an email to everyone that registered, as well as a recording of the session. So if you weren't able to join us live here on the show at the moment, don't worry, you'll get a recording out afterwards. Cool. So let's get this rolling, right?
Yep.
All right. Let me go for this. I have to scroll. I always forget it's a PDF. Before we start, our classic overview of the Expand Add-ons team, just to remind you guys that we've been making kick-ass software for 4 years. We have over 4,000 customers in 65 different countries. And just to let you guys know something, one of the things that we do value from most of our customers is the feedback that you guys give us. And because of this feedback, we've been able to build a roadmap with over 300 features that were all suggested by you guys. So thank you very much for that support on that sense, and continue giving us this feedback. It will definitely help us make X-Ray an even cooler app. Friendly reminder from your neighborhood Spidey man, no, joking. We have another really cool app. It's the Exporter app for Jira. So what does Exporter allow you to do? Well, let's say you need to share some reports with a customer who actually does not have access to your Jira instance. You can actually use Exporter to build Excel reports and Word reports as well, because it allows you to extract information using some specific placeholders that will be substituted with Jira information from your Jira issues. If you're curious to know more about Exporter, we actually have a webinar next Wednesday, 28th of March, around exactly this time. So it's 3 p.m. GMT. That would be 8 a.m. PST for y'all that are in PST time zone. In today's email, I will include a link to the registration for that Exporter webinar. That way you can join us and you can check what Exporter is all about. All right. Just a little overview of some of our customers that are using X-Ray. Cool. And I will now hand over the mic to Sergio.
Thank you, Lisa. So hello, everyone. First of all, really thanks for attending our webinar. I really hope you enjoy it. The aim of this webinar is to give you an overview of the main features of X-Ray. Unfortunately, we won't have the time to explore all features in detail, but you'll get an idea of what X-Ray allows you to do in terms of task management. The best way to learn all about X-Ray is by using it. So we do have a sandbox environment that you can use to try it out. Or you can even download the trial to your local Jira instance if you prefer. Finally, just to say that we will reserve some amount of time in the end so we are able to clarify some of your questions. And even if that's not enough, we'll contact you afterwards and try to answer all of you. So let's start, and I'll start by sharing my agenda for today, and I'll be covering a bit what are requirements in X-ray and how you can define the issues that you wish to cover with tests. And then I will be creating, in fact, one user story, and from there on afterwards, I'll be creating different types of tests in order to validate it. I will also introduce the precondition concept, and then afterwards, I will speak a bit about the two different possibilities that X-ray allows you for organizing your test issues. So we now have the flat approach and also the hierarchical approach, if you prefer. We'll see each one of them, and then afterwards you can decide whether to use one or the other. From there, I will be creating a plan in order to validate those tests in some version of the system, and I will be creating multiple test executions. I'll be covering both manual and a bit of automated tests, and then finally I'll move to the reporting, the different reporting capabilities that X-ray offers to you, and some others that are provided by some top-notch add-ons such as Exporter and also EasyBI. Okay, so enough talk for now, and let's go into practice. And well, you can see here in this issue screen that in this screen that X-ray in fact provides plenty of settings. So I'm looking at actual add-ons section in Jira administration, and well, X-ray covers as many settings in fact that allow you to fine-tune its behavior. But the most important one for me is the issue type mapping, and this is like a one-time setting that you need to do, and because this allows you to see all the available issue types that you have in your local Jira instance, and then you can define the ones that you wish to consider as being requirements. And these are the ones that you can actually cover with tests. So if you want to make task coverage for improvement, you can just drag this issue type to this column. And you can do the same for, in fact, for defects. And this is also relevant because it will affect some of the reports that X-ray provides to you. Okay, so what I'll be doing now will be all done in the scope of some project that I have. And well, X-ray, as you will have the opportunity to see afterwards, is quite flexible, so it means that you can actually use it in many different ways and adapt it to your own team needs. So, but for the time that we have, I'll be doing all in the scope of the same project. So all the user story, the bug, and the testing related artifacts will be created in the scope of this project. But you can see afterwards that X-ray gives you the flexibility to organize these kind of issues between different projects if you want to. So let me start by creating a user story. Okay, so I'm looking, let's say that this is a project for a calculator. So quite an amazing project, as you may guess. And let's say that as a user, I can calculate the sum of two numbers. So this is my feature for version 3. Okay, and now let's have a look at it. The first thing that you notice right away is that the user screen of our user story is a bit enhanced from the standard one. So you can see this requirement status custom field that provides you a glance at the current coverage status of this user story. So you know right away that it's uncovered for version 3. And then a bit below, within the test coverage section, you can see all the tests that validate this user story. So the next question arises, how can I create tests in order to validate my user story? Well, you can actually create them from the top create button since a test is in fact an issue in Jira. Or you can do it from the test coverage section. The only difference is that if you do it from the create new tests button, your test case will automatically be linked to the user story. So you don't have to link it by hand. So let's create a test. And well, the first thing that you can see, as I said, a test is in fact an issue type And in fact, we are using issue types for the different testing phases. So we have the test, which is an issue type that is an abstraction of some test case template. So it's a reusable entity that is not related with the execution aspects. It's just a specification. Then you can complement that specification by using reusable preconditions. And preconditions are like the abstraction of some initial condition that your test must assure. And, well, you actually can link one precondition to multiple tests if you want, and that makes it more manageable. Then you can group your tests in an entity that we call a test set. Basically, it's a group of tests. It's a flat list that allows you to group your tests by some logical reason, let's say by component, by business case, by security, by performance. So you can organize your testing as many lists, as many test sets as you may want to. And then you can reuse these test sets as a quick way for you to schedule executions or for you to create plans for them. Talking about plans, so we have the test plan issue type, which is an abstraction of the planning phase. So it means that it's a way for you to keep track of a certain group of tests in some version of the system. And it basically will group the different iterations and multiple executions that you're going to do for those tests in that version of the system. And it will present to you the consolidated overview of those multiple iterations. So the test plan will show you the latest result for each one of the tests that are being tracked within the plan. And as I mentioned, each time that you want to actually execute one or more tests, in fact, you need to create a task for it. We call that task a test execution. But why are we using the issue types in Jira? Well, if you are keen to Jira, then you'll see that you gain a lot with it because you got lots of flexibility on the customization. You can add custom fields to them if you want. You deal with permissions in the same way as you deal with any issue type in Jira. You can also organize them in the scope of the same project, or you can split them between different projects. You can implement workflows on top of them if you want. So X-Ray is quite unique in this sense because it's the only one that uses the Jira concepts to its most, leverage the Jira concepts to its greatest potential. Okay, I was going to create a manual test. And well, I can fill out here some the summary, the description. I would always advise to fill out the components and the labels as a way to quickly find these tests afterwards in case you need them. Then in the test details tab, you can see that in fact the test can be either manual, it can be a Cucumber automated test, or it can be something else that we call generic test. Well, I can fill out the steps right from this dialog, but we are a bit limited on the actual size of it, so I will leave this to an operation that I'll be doing afterwards. Then I can link my test with some existing entities, but I want to focus on how the association is done to the user story. Once again, we reuse the Jira concepts. So we have the special link, which is named tests, that tell you that this test validates some user story, or in fact, a test may validate more than one user story if you want. And a given requirement can be validated by one or more tests if you want. Okay, let's create it and let's have a look at it. Well, looking at our test case, okay, once again, think of the test issue as of a test case template, so it's just related to its specification. Since it's a manual test, it's composed of multiple steps. I can write the step description, including the expected result by using wiki markup, or I can also use the visual editor if I want to. Then I can even import the steps from an order test, from a CSV file, or even from the clipboard. So in order to gain some time, that's what I'm actually going to do, because for example, I can have here an Excel sheet with 3 columns filled out. I can simply do a copy and do a paste from the clipboard. And X-Ray will be able to automatically create the steps for me. And then I can add also attachments globally to the test, and I can also do it at step level. So let's, for example, add here an attachment, and here we go. We can also embed the attachment directly in the description of the step or the expected result if I want to. Well, then I can see all the associated entities with my test case. And I will take this opportunity to introduce right away and to change a bit our agenda by going into the creation of a precondition. So let's say that I need to have my calculator turned on before I'm able to actually execute this test. And for that, we can create a precondition. So a test case may be linked to 0, 1, or more preconditions. And this is quite useful because sometimes you may have a bunch of test cases that do require the same set of initial conditions. So instead of writing that down as the initial step or in all those tests, you can abstract it in a precondition and then link it to whatever test you want to. A precondition can also be manual or automated, and then you have this open field, which is the conditions field, where you can say turn on calculator. Okay, and then the session to our test case is done, and as soon as I do this, you can see in the precondition section that this test requires this precondition. If I go into the actual precondition issue screen, you can see that it's manual, this is the condition, and then you can see all the tests that do require it. You can also associate it with some existing tests if you want, right from the precondition issue screen. Now jumping to our manual test case once again, and scrolling a bit down, you can see all the related entities. So all the test sets where this test is part of, all the test plans where this test is part of, and also all the runs that you have made for this test. So the runs is a concept that we have in X-Ray that basically is like an instance of the test whenever you schedule a test for execution. And it contains a copy of the specification of the test case along with the actual results that you obtained in some version of the system. You can also execute the test right away in an ad hoc way, or you can do it in a more planned way, as I will show you during our session today. Finally, I can jump back to my user story using the issue link tests. And here we go. Okay, manual tests done. So let me now create a Cucumber automated test. Okay, let me just fill out the summary. X-Ray is also unique on this sense because it allows you to address BDD by allowing you to make the Cucumber specification right in Jira. So I will copy here the sample Cucumber scenario outline that I have already prepared. And well, you can see that we support the syntax highlighting for the Gherkin preserved keywords. Then you, after you create this test, you can see that you can extract this specification out from Jira by either using the REST API, the UI, or even by using the Jenkins or the Bamboo add-ons that we have. The thing here that is important to mention is that you manage this kind of tests in the same way. So they are related with the user story in the same way. You can also organize them in test sets, and you can also create preconditions and associate them to test plans. Okay, where we have one type of test missing, which is the generic test. And you guys are now asking yourselves, what is a generic test? Well, by exclusion is something that is nor a manual test nor a Cucumber automated test. So it can be used, in fact, for different purposes. So you can use it as an abstraction of some script that you may have that is not integrated with, for example, with automation, or you can use it as an abstraction of some automated test that you have implemented, for example, in JUnit, and you can use then this field here as the unique identifier for your automated test, such as the class name with the class method. Or you can use this as an abstraction of some exploratory test, at least in a simple way, in case you need to report results back to it. Well, in fact, when in X-Ray, we support JUnit, NUnit, Robot, and also TestNG in a few days. And so you actually, in the case of those automation frameworks, whenever you submit the results from those automated frameworks, X-Ray is able to automatically identify the test cases for you, and it will create test cases automatically and use this generic test definition to put here some unique identifier for your test case, such as the class name and the class method. So in that case, you don't even have to create the test by hand. Okay. So coming back to our agenda. So we are now going to cover organization. X-Ray provides you two different approaches. One is the flat approach by organizing tests in lists. We call them test sets, and this approach is more close to the Jira concept because a test set is also issue type in Jira. And then we have the hierarchical approach that is available from X-Ray version, since X-Ray version 3.0 that we launched back in December. And this is more, it's more friendly in one sense. It's also more close to the concept that some legacy tools offer you. Well, each approach has its own advantages. You can either decide to use one or the other, or you can even use a mix of them. Then afterwards you can have a look into our documentation to see the advantages and the cons of each one of them. So I will show you briefly how to create a test set. So this was the concept that X-Ray provides you for already 4 years, actually. So I will create a test set as an entity to group all the test cases related that I've just created related with this user story. So I can create a test set like this. And let's say that I want to group all my arithmetic related tests. I can pick here the test that I created. And then I can create it. Here we go. So it's a flat list. In fact, the test will not be contained within the test set itself. They will be linked to the test set, and this is actually what you can see here. So think of the test set as just a way to organize the test. It's just a list. It does not contain information related with execution aspects. So if you need to afterwards, for example, to create a test set containing all the tests, for example, that validate some requirement or that validate some requirements assigned to some fixed versions, and this is quite useful, for example, for regression purposes. You can pick the versions that you want, and this will return you, for example, all the test cases related with requirements assigned to this version. And this way, for example, you could create a regression-related test set just to have those tests ready in case you need to schedule executions for them. Okay, now the other approach, and this is more, I would say, beautiful in terms of what you see in the screen. It's also more close to the way that you organize your documents within your own laptops, which is the test repository concept. And within this approach, you can organize your tests in folders and subfolders. You can easily drag them around and sort them. You can then use these folders as means to create other entities such as scheduling executions, create plans, or even create test sets if you want. You can filter them. You can see here like the amount of test cases that are as direct childs and the total, including all the subfolders. Well, you can then rank the tests and the folders, apply your filters just to see the tests that may be relevant to you. And well, I will use this approach now in order to, for example, to see here, I can see here that I have 3 test cases that are within the scope of my project that are not yet organized within the test repository. So I'll create here a folder name. I will name it, for example, webinar. And now I'll go into the orphans, and I will drag them to this folder. Here we go. And now I will use this folder as the basis, for example, to create a plan. I could also create a plan and add the test by importing the test from a test set. But as I said, this is a different approach, and in this case, you use the folders as the means to achieve that. So I will create a plan using this folder in order to validate my tests in version 3 of the system. And when I do this, and I can actually copy the structure to the plan. So that means that we have, in fact, 2 levels of organization. One at the project level, and that one is a test repository concept, where you organize the things independently of execution aspects. And then whenever you create a plan, in order to track down the results of their test in some version of the system, you can actually organize the test them in a different way, or even use the organization that you have in the repository as the starting point for you to organize the tests within the plan. So let me create a plan. Now let's say that my plan is for tracking down all my tests relevant for version 3. Here what is important is that I assign this to version 3, because then all the executions that will be created from the plan will also inherit this fixed version. So what is a plan? A plan is a way for you to basically group multiple iterations, multiple test cycles. In our case, we call them test executions. And within the test plan, the tests are being tracked within it. You can see the latest status for them, independently of the number of executions that you actually schedule. Because sometimes you may schedule execution for all your tests. Sometimes you may schedule execution just for a subset of those. And then you need an higher level overview in order to see like the latest status for each one of the tests, because you don't actually know exactly when a test was executed for the last time. And that the test plan gives you that overview. Since this is a plan, you can fill out here some informative dates, such as the begin and the end date. Let's look at it. Here we go. So our plan is being handled as an artifact of version 3. It's assigned to version 3. So since this is an issue, well, you can assign a responsible for it. And then you can actually see all the tests that are being tracked within the plan, our 3 test cases. And for each one, you can see their latest status. And as soon as we have executions, you can actually see them underneath each one of them. Well, as I've said, you can also track this down in a board. And the board is like an organization for the associated with the plan, where actually you can also create and organize the tests within folders. Here you can also rank them by dragging them around. And then you can also easily create and schedule executions right from here. So for example, you could come here and create a test execution for all the tests that are underneath this folder, for example. So that's what I'm going to do now. So sample test execution. And then, well, it knows that it's for version 3 because the plan has also that information. Well, let's create it. Let's have a look at it. And, well, we are now looking at test execution, this test execution issue. So what does the test execution issue type concept represents? So every time that you want to actually execute a bunch of test cases, you have to create a test execution. So our test execution is, in other words, like a task for running a bunch of test cases in some version of the system. And this version is quite important because, in fact, afterwards, when you want to analyze the coverage information, we take into account the actual versions assigned to your executions. You can see that this execution is in fact the planned execution because it was created from the plan, so it's linked through this custom field here. And you can see the overall progress right here. Then this is the actual list of all the tests that belong to this test execution. And in fact, here I'm looking at the runs information because it contains the test specification and also the information about the actual result that you recorded. Well, how can actually execute it? Well, you can execute it right from here. That's what I'm going to do now. I just want also to mention that one thing that we have in X-Ray is that, well, you have two levels of assignment, and these can be quite useful for you. So you have an assignment for the test execution issue, and this, for example, could be like the person responsible for managing the test execution. And then at the test run level, you can also have an assignee. So this means that you can assign a specific run to a different user, like this. So you have here two levels of assignment, one at the test execution level and also one at the test run level in case you wish to have like a person responsible for the test execution and different persons actually executing the runs. Or you can also create different test executions for each individual tester if you don't need this kind of hierarchy in terms of management. Okay. Here you can rank the tests. You can also do bulk operations such as bulk assigning or bulk executing your test cases. Well, I'll go now executing my manual test. Well, now I'm actually in the execution screen and I'm now looking at the information of our test run. As you can see here, and this is quite clear that this test run borns from this test in the context of this execution. At the top, you can see the overall execution status. So X-Ray provides you some default status, but you are free to customize the status that you have. And now, you can also see that you can leave comments globally, you can also create defects globally, and attach some evidence globally to this run. But normally you do this at the step level. So going down into the actual execution details part, you can see that this test case requires some precondition, and then you can see the actual steps. Each step is composed of two rows, like inputs and outcomes for it. So at the step level, you can say that the test step passed or failed. You also have access to the attachments that you had in the test specification. You can leave comments and you can also create defects. And as soon as you start reporting the results back to each one of the steps, the execution status changes accordingly. So this is an automatic transition that X-Ray is able to do for you. So let's, for example, pass all the steps and except the last one. We had a problem in the calculator and unfortunately it crashed, okay? So what we can do here is, for example, we can also attach some evidence like a screenshot of the problem. And either at this moment in time or afterwards you can create the defect. But before I go into there, as soon as you fail a step, just want to show you that the overall execution status of this run changed to fail. And I will show you that the overall coverage information that you can see in the user story is also changed accordingly because we are failing our run. So our user story now, for example, you can see that it's failing because we now have one test failing for version 3. So this requirement status custom field is quite handy in the user story. Okay, coming back to our run. So we have executed our manual test. Let's see how the test execution looks like. Well, have you noticed that this workflow status has changed from to do to in progress? Well, X-Ray provides some workflow control mechanisms that allow you to transition the workflow of your test executions as you start executing the test runs, or even whenever you finish running them. This is great if you want to take advantage of Jira workflows. Okay, generic test. So the generic test, we don't have the time to go into it, but let's say that either it was some exploratory test or some script that executed by hand, or even something that you reported by the REST API. I will just pass this in line in order to be quick. We now have this Cucumber automated test. So how can I actually execute it? Well, you need first, I mentioned that you manage the specification in Jira, but in order to run this in the CI side, you need to extract this specification. And for that, you can either use the Jenkins or the Bamboo add-ons, or even use the REST API for that. You can also, I will show you a bit about of the internal, so I'll do this in the hard way, but you can see how it works in fact, so no secrets here. So what I'll be doing here is actually use the test execution issue screen, and I will export this to Cucumber, and X-Ray will generate me a feature file. So I'll copy this feature file to a sample project that I have here, which implements my advanced calculator in Ruby, and I will show you the feature that was generated by X-Ray. Well, the feature that was generated by X-Ray contains the copy of the specification that you made in X-Ray. You can also see the summary of the test, and we also put some special tags that allow us to basically map this specification to the correct entities in Jira. So whenever we actually run this in the CI side afterwards, the results will contain also those tags. So I will run this in this case by hand, but of course I could fully automate this in Bamboo or Jenkins. And now I have a JSON file, which I can simply submit to the REST API by doing a post request, or if I have those add-ons, I can easily use a task for it. So if now I come back to our test execution and if I refresh this, well, it worked, Lisa. So you can see here that the Cucumber automated test passed, and we can now go into the execution details and actually see, deep dive into the actual information about each one of the steps and about each one of the input examples that you can see here. And if you attach embedded some files such as screenshots in any of the steps, they will also be accessible from here. Okay, X-Ray in this case was also able to automatically resolve the issue to resolve. Let's come back to our test plan. So think of the test plan as an higher level above multiple executions. So what can we see in the test plan now? Well, you can see the same information essentially, because you have made one iteration exactly for all the test cases that are being tracked within the plan. So for each test that is being tracked within the plan, the latest status represents the result that I've recorded in that last test execution. Now you can drill down in each one of the test cases and see all the test executions that included that test case and the result that was reported against each test case in that test execution. If I scroll a bit down, you can also see within the test executions panel all the test executions related with our plan. Okay, I now can also track this within the board. So if you prefer to use the board, you can also, for example, organize the tests in different folders, like folder 1, folder 2. And this can be quite handy because, for example, you could, pick a set of tests to one folder and the other test to another folder, and then you can track down the results, the progress, the consolidated progress in a per folder basis. Okay, now let's come back to our test plan issue screen once again, and let's say that the guys told you that they fixed the problem. They always do that. But we need to make sure, right? So we can simply create a test execution currently for the tests that are in some given status, like the ones that are failing. Let's do that. And well, at this moment, I can speak a bit about something that appears here. So besides filling out here the revision of the system, and this could be like the SVN revision or the Git revision, well, or even if you want, you can also use it for the build number. So that is basically an open field. You can see that we also have here a field named test environments. What are test environments? So if you want to have a look at it afterwards, we have a short video on YouTube that explains this, but just to give you a glance of what it is, test environments allows you to track down the results on a per environment basis, and also allow you to track the requirement coverage on a per environment basis. So imagine that you wish to validate the same calculator application in both iOS or in Android. Of course, you could create different test cases for each one of the environments, but that would be some counterintuitive because you would be duplicating your work without need. So instead of doing that, you can, at the moment that you schedule executions, you can say in which environment you are actually going to execute them. And afterwards, you can see the test results on a per environment basis or globally. So for example, a test will be only considered as being passed if it passes in all the environments where you actually schedule executions for it. And likewise, if a test fails in at least one of the environments, then the overall test status will be also failed because it's failing in one of the environments. So a test will only be okay if it's passing both, for example, in this use case, both in Android and in iOS. And this is quite powerful. As I said, you can track the testing on a per environment basis, and you can also track the coverage information also on a per environment basis. I will leave this empty, and I will create a test execution now that remember that I failed a manual test, so this test execution only contains the manual test that I will now pass in line in order to be quick. So coming now to the test plan, what do you expect to see there? Since a test plan groups and consolidates results from multiple related test executions, you can see that the tests that are being tracked within the test plan, they are all now passing. Their latest status is pass because, for example, if I drill down on the manual test, you can see that the latest result for it was pass. And this is mostly it. I will now also explain a bit how you can actually leverage the test plan concept in your agile boards. Okay, and for that, let me jump into a sample board that I have here. Well, you can, if you are adopting Scrum, you know that you can track down the user stories, the bugs, and all of them. You can track them down in different columns. This is right, but it actually lacks the feedback from the testing. But with X-Ray, you can enhance your existing Scrum boards by including their information from the testing. So within the cards from that are related with the issues that you configure to be handled as requirements, such as the user stories, you can see right away here information about the current status of this user story. So you know that it's not okay for version 3. In this one, for example, you see that although someone moved it to the done column, you know that this is actually not done because you have problems in version 3. And then, of course, you could go into the actual details of the user story and then actually see the latest results of the tests underneath it, and even analyze it on an environment basis if you want to. But you can also include other entities in the Scrum boards. You can also include the plans and also the test executions and show their progress in the board. And this can be quite handy. So for example, you can create a plan for tracking down the regression related tests within one plan, and another plan for tracking down the tests related with the user stories that you implemented in the scope of this sprint. And by showing here the information about the actual progress of the plan, everyone from the team, either both managers, testers, and everyone can have a clear understanding of the actual progress without having the need to go to additional reports. And as I said, you can also include the test executions, and this would be more helpful, for example, if you're doing manual testing here and including information about the progress of them by including a specific custom field, which is the test execution status. And that way, you know, if that task is actually done and the actual result that was recorded in that test execution. Okay, this is great. I always like to mention this because people normally try to go to a bunch of places in order to obtain information, and they don't actually know that they can get lots of information right in the Scrum board. But X-Ray also provides some other kinds of reports, and I'll start by showing here some simple reports. These are more listing reports where you can see all the tests and see their latest status for some specific version by taking into account the executions that you made for that version on that specific environment. And although you can also do the same for test sets. And as I mentioned earlier, although tests and test sets are not actually related with executions, the tests are in fact specifications, and the test sets are organization of the test issues. Sometimes it's handy for you to evaluate the stages that are grouped in, for example, in a certain test sets. For example, whenever you have, for example, a security-related test set, you can easily evaluate the status of the tests that are in that test set by taking into account the execution that you made for version 3. Then you can list all the test executions, in which version they were ran, the revision. You can also see the defects that you record in the version, in that execution, and the same for test plans. Okay, but X-Ray provides more extensive reports actually, and let me start with the overall requirement coverage, because I really love this one because it presents you a perspective of the things, the actual requirements, the actual user stories, the thing that you are actually delivering to the end user. And I'm showing here all my requirements. I'm grouping them by component. I could group them by priority, for example, and I'm then analyzing them, taking into account the executions that I made for some version. So for example, here, I know that I have 6 requirements assigned to the core component that are actually okay on version 3. And this means that the testing that you made for those, for the tests that are linked to each one of those user stories, that they pass, all of them pass. So you can then drill down and actually see the information related with each one of the user stories. And if you guys are using Scrum, you can also take advantage of the epic user story concept, and X-Ray understands that. And so if you make test coverage on the user stories, you're going to have automatically the test coverage also on the related epics. Okay, so and this chart also shows you some valuable information, because as I mentioned, X-Ray provides information about the coverage, whether if the user story is covered or not, but it goes a bit further than that. Actually, you can see if it's okay or not okay, for example, based on the actual testing that you made for it. Then we have a similar report, but that shows you the coverage information, like the amount of the user stories that are passing or not passing based on the testing that you made until that day. And then we have the typical traceability report. And this is quite handy. You can filter out the requirements that you want to show in the chart in this table report, or it's actually a table report. And then you can say how you want to analyze them. This basically will take into account the executions that you made for version 3 in all environments. So you can see, for example, this user story is okay for version 3. All the test cases that validate that user story are okay. And well, you have some runs that you made. And if for example, you reported some defect, you're going to see it on the right side on the defects column. Okay, if you want to, for example, analyze this for some other version, take into account the execution that you made for other version, this is as easy as picking the version here. Then you have more metric-oriented reports, such as the test plans and the test execution report. And this shows you some metrics related with, for example, test plans, where you can see the current amount of tests currently grouped by status, by type. You can also see the progress and also the success rate, and also the success rate by environment, and also the link defects that are either in an open or closed status. Well, the progress here basically tells you the amount, the percentage of test cases that are in a final status. The success rate tells you the percentages of the tests that are basically contributing to the OK status of your user stories. For test executions, we have a similar report with some metrics where you can actually see the progress and the success rate, elapsed time, which is also calculated automatically based on the time that you took to actually execute the test case. These reports can be exported to CSV. The test runs report provides you a list of all the runs related with some version, for example, that are assigned to some specific user, that were executed by some specific user, or that are in some specific status. This can also be exported to CSV. Then we have, besides these reports, we also have some gadgets. And the gadgets that we have allow you to see also the requirement coverage information, and also the historical coverage information. You can also see the evolution of your tests through time, where you can actually see the amount of tests that are passing or failing until that time. You can also see the runs grouped by priority, by some user, also in a tabular way. You can also list requirements. And remember that we do have some specific custom fields for the different issue types. So, for example, if you want to make a listing of the user stories, of the requirements, generally speaking, and see how they are, you can just reuse the filter results gadget that comes with Jira and include the requirement status custom field. You can also see how certain lists, how certain tests are for some version or some environment by using that test list gadget. You can also list test sets and test executions, and if you want to see some calculated status information for them, you can include, for example, the test set status or the test execution status. And here you can see also that some defects that were reported in that specific execution. And also the test plans. Okay, we are always improving this further, so it's normal that we are going to add additional gadgets and reports afterwards. But X-Ray also goes a bit step ahead, I'd say. So it enhances your reporting capabilities by allowing you to take the most out of it by using through other top-notch add-ons. And well, one of those add-ons is in fact the actual the add-on that Lisa talked about.
Exporter?
Yeah, let me just drink a bit of water.
Someone's running out of breath here.
Yeah, it's really hot. So with Exporter, you can actually export information from all your Jira issues to fully customize Word or PDF or Excel documents. So in fact, there is template store. It's not a store because actually the templates are free. So you can build out a template in Word or Excel with the layout and the logos that you want, and then put some placeholders that will be replaced with information from the Jira issues that you select. And X-Ray Exporter also provides, of course, integration with X-Ray. So we have some free templates that you can reuse in case, for example, if you need to make a test specification report, or even if you need to create a test execution report and then hand it over to some management or even to your own customers. So what I've been doing now in order to show this, for example, let me pick here, for example, this test execution, this one, and well, I can, from the test execution issue, I can choose a template here and say that the output format that I want. And then I can tell Exporter to generate a Word document with this information using that template with whatever logos and whatever formatting that I have there. So let me just open the information of the test within the document. So you can see here the information, including the attachments of the specification. Oh, even the smiles get here, Lisa.
Oh, look at the emojis.
So and here you go. So this is quite handy in case you need to generate these kind of reports. And guess what? You can also automate this, for example, on the transition of a workflow, or send it to some, for example, on a transition of a workflow, for example, you can also send some email or attach it to some Confluence page, or you can even schedule this on a periodic basis and say, for example, every Monday generate me a report with information related with this task plan, for example. This can be quite handy. Okay, another integration that we have with EasyBI guys. So the EasyBI is another vendor. It provides a very powerful BI-like add-on for Jira. Actually, it imports information from Jira, and it will build out an OLAP cube with where you can actually find the dimensions, and you can navigate on them, build whatever kind of charts or tables, table-like reports. And this addresses the need whenever you want to generate fully customized reports. So this is a different need from the one that I actually mentioned with Exporter, because Exporter is for generating reports as Word or PDF or Excel assets. In this case, you want to, it's a different kind of need where you want to have define the flexibility to define the dimensions and also the charts and also the tables that you want to obtain. And then you can also embed this in dashboards, for example. Okay, just one more integration. I know that we are pressed on time. We also have integration with Structure. So there are many teams out there using Structure in order to organize issues in hierarchy way. So we provide some facilities here where you can actually see the tests within some test executions and also tests within some test plans. And you can also see the tests that are related with user stories. And then you can also manage this kind of relations just by dragging the issues around. Okay, so let me get back to my agenda and see if I miss anything. So I will, before I actually go and over to you, let me just speak a bit about automation and the REST API. So we do have, X-Ray is quite powerful in terms of the automation capabilities, and we are going to make it even more powerful in the near future, so expect here great news. So we have integration with some test automation frameworks, including JUnit, NUnit, Robot framework, and in a few days, by the way, we are going to have version 3.1, which will also add the support for TestNG. And of course, Cucumber and Behave. Well, X-Ray also comes with a built-in REST API, so that allows you to fully manage the testing related entities to import and export results back to X-Ray. You can also import Cucumber features in Cucumber test by using the REST API. This is quite powerful in fact. And well, you can see that we have integrations with Bamboo, Jenkins. You also have some instructions for Maven and TeamCity. You can also include the gadgets in Confluence pages if you want. Okay, now it's your turn, Lisa.
Back to me, Bob.
I will drink a bit of water, you know.
I really like this new mic. It's really nice. All right, guys. So, well, thank you, Sergio. That was actually pretty cool. That's it for the X-Ray product walkthrough for now. I don't really think we have time for questions. I think I've been answering some of them as we went along, and I know Sergio kind of answered a couple with these when he showed the integrations at the last part.
I can answer
You can answer one? Great.
Yeah.
Which one? Grab from there.
So, nevertheless, feel free to add additional questions while.
Yeah, I'll still send all the answers out when we're done.
So one of the questions is, if I can integrate test automation toolsets into X-Ray when they support the JUnit format, for example, UFT. In fact, we do have an integration, validated integration with LeanFT, which is UFT Pro. So you can also check that out in our automation section within the integration with testing frameworks. Here, if you scroll a bit down, there are many tutorials for many different languages. And in fact, you're going to see, for example, one tutorial where we explore UFT Pro and JUnit and how to integrate with X-Ray.
There's Python in there as well. Didn't I see that?
Yes. So one other integration, we wonder if the generic test case was written by Python. Is it possible to be automated as a Cucumber test case? So for Python, yeah, you can. Let me go a bit down here. Once again, just search here for the tutorials that we have. So let me scroll a bit down there, Python. You're going to see here some testing using, for example, Python, you can use behave in Python, which is similar to the typical Cucumber. It's Cucumber, in fact, a small different flavor of it. And if you guys are using Python, you can also use PyTest and take advantage of the JUnit kind of reports. The difference here is that, well, with Behave, you manage the specification in Jira, while with PyTest, you don't actually manage the specification in Jira. You just report the results back to Jira, and X-Ray will automatically create the generic test entities for you. Are they? I can answer this.
You can answer more?
Yeah,
You're on a roll.
Yeah, our test environments are customizable field. Well, the test environments are in fact like a label. So there's no restriction on that for now. So that's a thing that we aim to improve. So basically here you can you can put your it's like a label. In fact, there are no restrictions here. Just have in mind that these are global, so we don't have like a per project customization on that. But this field is specific from X-Ray, so if you want to use this test environment concept, you should use it. Integration. How about integration with Jenkins? So yeah, that's also a good question. Unfortunately, you don't have the time to go into all of your questions, but with Jenkins, we have a free add-on for it, where you can, here in the documentation, under the integrations and the API integration with Jenkins, you can see how you can configure actually Jenkins. You have specific tasks for importing the results, where actually you can define here in the format of the file here, and then you can fill out some information that will be filled out in the test execution that will be created. Okay, I think this is it. or else you'll be a bit tired, right?
We'll be here until next Christmas. Cool. Thank you, Sergio, for answering. You've actually answered like half the questions. The other ones, I'll be sure to harass him and get those answered and send an email out today. Just a friendly reminder, it is actually me sending the email. So if you guys have some feedback or you just have a question or I don't know, you just want to compliment me because I'm awesome, you can just reply to the email and I'll read it. A quick reminder, these are some of the resources that we have available for X-ray. I'll gladly include those in the email as well. So we have our Confluence documentation, which is this first link, our X-ray, our Xpand add-ons websites, which is the second link. You can also take a look at our blog, which we're trying to post some fun articles about trends or how we've done in certain events that we've visited. You can see that there. Our Twitter account, this is the coolest one. We're constantly trying to be active on Twitter, so make sure you hit on that follow. Our YouTube channel, this one here, almost the last one. And if you want to test out X-ray and let's say you don't want to log into a Jira instance or whatever, you can always try our sandbox right there. It gives you the steps on how to create an account and you can play around with X-ray a little bit. So I can include these links in the follow-up email that I will be sending out today, along with the answers to the questions that we didn't take time to answer now.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Sergio.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Have a good rest of the day, y'all.
Yeah. Thank you. Hope to see you soon.
Ciao.